Hey everyone, welcome to our inaugural episode of Confessions of a Founder. My name is Alysha M. Campbell, and I am the founder and CEO of CultureShift HR. And I am so thrilled to be here with all of you today. I am so grateful that you're taking the time to listen in and really being a part of this journey, which I'm super excited to share more about as we kick off this podcast and as we kind of talk more about the purpose and mission of Confessions of a Founder. So, with this podcast, what you can expect is my own personal story, my own personal journey of being an entrepreneur, being a founder, going through the ups and downs of managing a business, but also understanding kind of key human resources or HR and DEI trends as well. So, we're going to be having a mix of my personal journey, the things going on at Culture Shift behind the scenes, and then also do's and don'ts of HR if you are running a business, if you're growing a team, if you're seeing things in the news and you're like, oh my gosh, what is happening? We're going to talk about it here. So there's going to be a really great ebb and flow of, culture shift, my journey, all things business, entrepreneur, founder things that you may not know or want to get more exposure to, but also learning things on the HR side, which is a topic that not only that I've built my business on, but a topic that I'm incredibly passionate about and want to help educate others on to not make mistakes and avoid the pitfalls that many business owners encounter on their own kind of internal HR journey. So, to get us started, let's talk about me. Hey everyone, if you are just tuning in to this podcast, you're not familiar with myself, Alysha, or you're not familiar with Culture Shift, I kind of want to talk a little bit about myself, my journey getting here into the land of entrepreneurship, being a founder of a high six-figure business, growing a team, meeting with clients all over North America, globally, and what that has done to myself, to my family, going into deep things as understanding imposter syndrome and how that all comes to be. And to kind of take us back where we all started, I knew that I was going to have a business at some point. I didn't know when, but I knew that even being in the corporate landscape, I really wanted to have an opportunity to have something for myself. I knew that I was very resourceful. I knew that I wanted to start something, build something. And that's just something that I always just had in the back of my mind as something that I was going to eventually do. It was interesting because over the years growing up, my situation or my home life was very interesting. My mom was a stay-at-home mom. My dad was, I would say, an entrepreneur in his own right, but he didn't have a lot of stability. And that led to a lot of financial distress, a lot of financial hardship in my family, which we will dive into in a separate podcast episode. That to me made me feel very scared, for lack of a better word. I had a very bad scarcity mindset when it came to money. I was always stressed about money growing up. I always had a lot of anxiety about money growing up. And so as much as I had this passion or this gun-ho-ness about me on wanting to, build something for myself, I was also very much of the mind of what's going to make my life stable, what's going to make my life something that I can, have a regular paycheck coming in. I can go on, those once a year trips and I can have a family. And so with those things in your mind, going the entrepreneurial route doesn't line up with stability, doesn't line up with taking trips whenever you want to, at least not at the time when I was thinking about entrepreneurship growing up. And it really became something that I just said, you know what, this probably isn't going to be for me because I wanted stability. I wanted that 9 to 5. I wanted to climb that corporate ladder, if you could believe it or not. That was something that was like a key goal of mine. And the reason behind that was if I knew that I couldn't do my own business, I wanted to be the best of the best in my industry. I wanted to rise to the level of a chief HR officer or a chief diversity and inclusion officer. And I knew that if I worked really hard, if I studied really hard, got good grades in school, got great internships, worked at, the best companies, that was a reality that I could have within my grasp. Unfortunately, it wasn't. And that's not to say that's because I did not try. I learned, as many of us do, not only as women, but Black women in the workplace, it's not a space for us to grow up. It's not a space for us to feel supported. It's not always a space that allows us to be seen. It's not always a space where we have the spotlight or we can have the space to shine. And so I faced a lot of obstacles. I faced a lot of challenges, not realizing that it was let's just call it the system, being the system, and didn't realize it was the system and that it was not me. Growing up, because I didn't have parents that were used to going into corporate jobs or didn't use that experience of working at 9 to 5, many of the situations I would encounter, they kind of couldn't relate to. And not only could they not relate to it, but they also didn't really have much advice on how to manage things going on in the workplace. So, what does that mean? For example, if you are not getting along with your boss, or there's hostility, or you're facing microaggressions, and mind you, I know microaggressions today as a 30-year-old. I did not know that being 21, 22, trying just to do a good job, but feeling very small in a room of my peers. So you bring these stories or you bring these incidences to your family to be like, oh, how was your day? And I'd be like, yeah, XYZ happened and I really didn't feel great. And they'd be like, okay. And kind of leave you with these feelings. And so for myself, I just thought that was normal, number one, and I thought it was my fault because no one else seemingly around me had those issues. No one was talking about the way that we talk about diversity and inclusion in the workplace today. So it was a very lonely experience. And for myself, I was like, you just got to try harder, Alysha. You just got to keep going, Alysha. You just got to double down. And as much as all those things are great, you always want to do a good job in your career. You always want to put your best foot forward. It actually became a very toxic environment for me. And one of two things happened. One, I became incredibly self-critical about myself. I over-criticized myself in everything that I did at work. I was striving for perfectionism, which, as we know, doesn't exist. And I was really hard on the type of things that I was doing. And that left me feeling very alone and very scared. Because of that, I would job hop a lot. So usually I would stay at a job for maybe about a year to 15 months and I was gone because by that time I was bored. I wasn't getting the promotion I wanted. I wasn't getting the raise that I wanted. And so the fastest way to get more money is to literally go to another job. So I was job hopping every, 12 to 15 months, but still finding the same issues everywhere I went. So again, I'm like, well, then it must be me. And at my one of my jobs being probably about a senior HR business partner, I realized the team was growing and I realized, where I was earning at that point in time and what everybody else was earning around me. And it was a real shocker. It was a real blow to my ego because I was the most tenured professional on the team. And yet everyone that came in after me was making 25 to 35K more than me a year. And again, no one's going to sit there and explain to you why someone's salary is the way it is. No one's going to sit there and explain their experience or, maybe where they came from prior to that job and how their role might be different. No one took the time to explain that to me. So my mind just ran rampant on its own insights of why is this happening? Why am I not good enough? Why am I not, being seen as valuable enough? And to me, the value of myself was tied to the amount I earned. And that was very clear. Like 2 years ago, you probably couldn't tell me any different that the value of a human being was the dollar amount at the end of the month or what they earned on an annual basis. And it was because in these corporate environments, it was very clear to me that those who made more had more opportunity, had more advantage, were put on the best projects and initiatives. And those who didn't, they weren't. They got overlooked. They kind of just got the run of the mill assignments, and no one really paid attention to them. And for myself, I really wanted to not only do great work, but I love what I do. I love it so much that I was up at 4:35 in the morning doing work, going to bed 11:30 midnight, literally burning the candle on both ends. I would sleep with my laptop, I kid you not, right beside me so that as soon as my eyes opened, I clicked the button and I would be reading emails and sending emails off at 5:30, 6 o'clock in the morning. That's how dedicated I was to my job, and that's how much I loved my job. And what was happening was this internal conflict where that type of burnout was slowly eroding my self-worth, was slowly eroding my relationships, was slowly eroding any type of life that I had outside of work because I thought I had to be better. I thought I had to, in order to show what better looked like, I had to work twice as hard. There's a saying a lot in the Black community where you have to work twice as hard to get half as far. And that was just something that was drilled in me from a very young age because I saw the way, my parents decided to live their life, and I knew what I wanted for my life, and I knew that I would have to work harder in order to not slip into those habits. And it was really important for me to get as much distance away from that as possible. Because one, I wanted to make my own lane. I wanted to be my own person. But two, I realized that to be better, to get further, you had to have certain determination. You had to have certain discipline. And that's what I wanted to demonstrate. And I felt that anything that wasn't that, I kind of didn't want anything to do with it. So here we are, 7, 8 years in my corporate career. And I'm literally, on my last thread. My home life is a mess because I'm literally working from the moment I wake up to when I leave. I travel to work for 8 hours, travel home, eat dinner, and I'm literally working another 2, 3 hours before I go to bed. And so that's going to put a lot of strain on your personal relationships, and it definitely put a massive strain on mine. There was opportunities where I would literally even work, not literally even work, I worked every weekend trying to get ahead. I was exhausted. My body, my health was deteriorating. And the funny thing is, and when I talk about my story, I think about how no one said anything. This is a little bit of a sidebar, but you would think you see, like, let me take a step back. People were not blind to the efforts of which I was putting myself through. It was very obvious. If you have someone on your team, if any managers that are listening to this right now, when you have someone on your team who's answering emails at 5 in the morning, that's a problem. Unless they're in a different time zone than you, if they're in EST or 5 a.m. their time zone, that is a problem. And I would have really appreciated if someone had taken me aside, whether my manager, a coworker, someone senior, and really anybody who saw or had a glimpse of what I was doing to say, you know what, Alysha, I know what you're trying to do, but this isn't the way to go about it. And this is why. I think that would have saved me a lot of heartache, a lot of turmoil, a lot of stress, but we're here. I just find that funny. Well, it's not funny, but I find that very interesting how people see things, but they don't say things. But we'll leave that for another conversation. And it got to a point where literally I was just at a wall. I was exhausted. I was burnt out. I tried to take on as much work as I could to amplify, demonstrate my value. And I'm in my office and I'm literally crying. I am bawling my eyes out. I'm hyperventilating. I actually went under my desk so that people couldn't see me and just think that I was maybe in a meeting or out to lunch. And I just remember feeling so low and so angry at myself because all I could think about was all the work I had put in. And all I could think about was it not being enough. And what I was telling myself and what I was telling my body at the time was, I'm not enough. And when you've gone through the ringer where you've changed jobs, where you've worked the hours, where you've sacrificed so much, and you still feel that you're not enough, you snap. You really honestly snap. You really do, because you keep looking for solutions, but nothing's really coming to you. So, as I'm having this breakdown, which actually probably very little, if anybody knows outside of like other podcasts and things I've done. But when I think about like even in the small circle that I had at the time, I don't think many individuals knew what I was going through. Maybe one person, if that. But as this was happening, there was a little voice in my inside of my head saying, "Alysha, this isn't you. This is not a you problem." And I just remember that voice getting louder and louder and louder. And of course, the counteract to that is, well, if it's not me, then what is it? And literally, I thought to myself, if they are not giving you a door, build your own damn door. Like, build your own door, build your own path, and that's what you're going to pursue. And now, mind you, when you've been working corporate 7, 8 years, again, I had dreamed about my corporate career. I was that little girl who had the vision board of like, I'm going to work here for X amount of years. I'm going to have this title and this salary, this bonus. I like planned out my whole career of 30 plus years, the rise of where I was going to go, the titles I was going to hold, the accolades I was going to have. It was a whole vision for me. So for my inner voice to tell me, no, we're not going to do that, it was a very big shock, because that's all that I had been working for up to that close to a decade. When you think about that, I'm emotionally drained. I'm at a space where I don't have many people who understand me, who don't understand my own story at that time, the challenges as a Black woman to get where I got to do all the things that I was doing, and not having anyone to relate to. It was very interesting for my inner voice to say, build your own door. So as I composed myself and really took time to understand what that meant, I was like, well, I love HR. Like, hands down, if anybody calls me about an HR problem, I could talk for hours. I could talk for hours on the employee life cycle. I could talk for hours on recruitment, learning and development, manager training, communications in the workplace, inclusive, like literally I could I could go off about it because I love it so much. I have such a passion for culture, specifically workplace culture, because we spend so much time at work. We spend so much time putting our love and energy and effort into something that if it's not a place where you feel like you belong, that's kind of really crappy. So I was like, well, I love what I do. That to me is not a question. I just didn't love the environment of which I was doing it. And so I was like, well, if where I'm working isn't going to appreciate me, then I'm going to find other people who do. Now, when you set out to build a business, to be like, adios, I'm going to leave this corporate job, it's very terrifying. But that's what I did. And I didn't do it, at least for the first iteration of Culture Shift. It was not I'm quitting my corporate job, I'm going to start my own business, watch out world, here I come. It was actually very like, okay, I'm going to just start something on the side and I'm going to see where this goes. I had no clue what I was doing. And I'm being so honest. You hear those stories, they're like, well, I did this and blah, 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 and this just took off the ground. No, that's not this story. So if you're like, where's the, oh my gosh, I woke up one morning and I had a business and the thing and that's not this. I did not know what I was doing. But I knew enough to get started. Meaning when you think about any business that you're going to start, you need a website, you need like, what's your services? What are you going to focus on? Who's your target audience? How much are you going to charge? How are you going to find these people? Like, I had been through enough business classes and I had been in business enough that I knew the basic fundamentals. Now, what was challenging, even when getting started with Culture Shift, was two things. One, the time. I still had my 9 to 5. My 9 to 5 was something that I did not want to give up yet. I knew that like I needed to live and I was making a decent salary. I had a certain motivation to still want to make corporate work. So I had to figure out other ways to find the time to build my business. What better time than already at 4:35 in the morning and 7 o'clock at night when you get home? And that's what I did. The extra time that I had put into my job now got reverted to creating Culture Shift. I remember building the first iteration of the Culture Shift site on Wix. I remember writing the copy. I remember finding stock photos to put on the website. I remember writing my own bio. I really just did what I thought was the best way to do it. I looked at competitors, I called people, and really just day by day figured out what I was doing. It's funny because I look back at those times, and when you kind of vision what you want your business to be, you think like 10 years down the line, and one day it's going to look like this. And then you're there and you're like, oh my gosh, I remember little Alysha sitting at her little glass desk and, creating a Wix website. And now we have a team of 6. It blows my mind. Before getting too ahead of myself, yes. So I, at the time, because it really just was me, I did all the things. I would wake up super early and I would do research. I would look at companies I wanted to reach out to. I would look at postings for consultants. I would look to see what other consultancy firms were out there, and really just started to build a repository of what people were looking for when they were looking at HR and DEI consultants. Really, it took from there me reaching out individually to other senior executives at other companies to say, hey, are you looking for some support? Are you looking for a consultant? Are you looking for someone to do some training, some coaching? And I got a lot of no's. Actually, wait, I got a lot of silence. Let's be real. Many times when we're reaching out cold to leads or to people, we really very rarely hear back. But it was a lot of silence. But I didn't let the silence stop me. I used that as an opportunity to get feedback. I had a very small network at the time of people that I trusted with this, because you have to remember, when you're working corporate, not many organizations are excited that you're like, I'm going to start my own little thing on the side. So I had to be incredibly careful. I did not want to lose my job. I didn't want to jeopardize my main source of income while I was building Culture Shift. So we, meaning I'm so used to saying we now because of the team. But for myself, it was really being specific on finding people who didn't have anything to do with like my circles, and like people who I knew from somebody else that could give me feedback, that could give me insight, and really just a lot of trial and error. And a little bit of luck. The first client I got is still my client to this day. That was such an incredible moment for me. That was such a validation for me. And the work that I had put into outreach, to conversations, to phone calls, when you finally get that win, it feels incredible. There is no other feeling like it. But then you got to start doing the work. And so slowly but surely, the work continues to happen. We continue to do great work together. But what's funny is that I'm like, okay, I'm going to build this business. And I have one client. Yeah, I could do the work. I could do it. We're going to win. But then as you start to get into the work, and as you start to see your time getting, now portioned into other things outside of building the business, your time for building the business then becomes smaller. So after I got that first client, really, I didn't get another client for probably about another year and a half, give or take. I had one or two small little projects, but nothing to the space where I could, one, quit my corporate job, but two, feel like this was actually a success. It actually felt like just beginner's luck. And so fast forward to today, Culture Shift is now a team of 6. I'm now based in New York City. I'm based in the United States, where originally, if you don't know this about me, I'm Toronto born and raised. And we're doing such incredible things like this podcast, which I've always had a dream of and I've always had a vision of, but didn't have the capacity or mindset or opportunity to really do it. And now the perfect time has come for that. So that is how we got started, or how I got started with Culture Shift. And when I think about the lessons I've learned, it's so important to believe in yourself. And you hear that all the time. It's so cliche. I said it and I'm like, oh my gosh, did I really just say that? But yeah, because in the beginning, it really is just you. It really is just you having the determination to wake up at 5 in the morning. No one's going to tell you, hey, Alysha, go work on your website. Hey, Alysha, do some competitor research. Hey, Alysha, go to this networking event. Hey, no one. Like, you may have a friend or two or maybe a mentor that's like, hey, you should do ABC. But no one's going to push you. No one's going to stand there and bombard you with things that you need to do. You need to have that self-determination to do that yourself. And to do that yourself, you have to believe that what you're doing is worth the time, the energy, the effort, the mind power of what you are doing. It's not easy. Waking up at 5 a.m. to then sit in front of a computer for 90 minutes to 2 hours to then get ready for my corporate job, which I then have to work 8 hours and then come back home and do it all over again. It's not easy. It's exhausting. I also wanted to relax. I also wanted to spend time at home with my family. I also wanted to, do other things. But because I wanted this so bad, nothing else was important to me. Nothing else mattered as much as this. And so the lesson I learned that if you want something, go get it. No one's going to serve this to you on a silver platter. No one is going to, present to you a fully fledged business and say, now go run it, go be CEO. You have to really want this for yourself. And you're going to have to show yourself, just for your own lessons, that you can do this, because there are going to be moments, and there are moments, and there will continue to be moments where you're like, oh my goodness, this is the end. And I'm telling you, it's not. This is not even scratching the surface of the end. Believe in yourself. Two, mind you, when I started CultureShift, it was 2018. We did not have AI. We did not have ChatGPT. We did not have, many of the things that make businesses a lot easier right now. But if I were to go back in time, one of the things I would learn to do is to network, which was really hard for me because the city that I grew up in, I love Toronto. Toronto's a gorgeous city. There are incredible people there, but it can be hard to get into the circles and the spaces and the places that you need to be in. And so I just kept myself out, and I played in the digital space a little bit, and that's where my focus was. But I had wished that I took more time to get in front of people, talk to more people, do more coffee chats, just to, one, learn from others, but I think two, to also get out there, get exposure. I definitely did that more come year two of the business, but in the beginning, it was very much behind the curtain, very much behind the scenes. And I would say three of lessons that I've learned being, now with Culture Shift and seeing where we were at the time is ask for help. I was horrified and terrified to ask for help because I didn't want anyone to know what I was doing. And so getting a friend to do research with me, maybe they're better at it than I was. Maybe finding a marketing intern to help me with the website or help me write a pitch deck, as an example. Those are things that I wish I had done and didn't feel like I had to be all me and didn't feel like I had to do all the things and wear all the hats. But I did. And I learned a lot. But if I could go back and turn back the hands of time, I would definitely ask for help and do that part differently. But when I look ahead and I see the incredible opportunity that is in front of us for CultureShift HR, I am thrilled. Like, I am tickled pink on what we are doing. I am so blessed to have the incredible team that I have every single day pushing and creating and building. And that in and of itself is a testament of what you can do when you believe in yourself. We as Culture Shift, we created a beautiful space where I wanted to be around people that could be my friends. I wanted to work with my friends. And when I think about the individuals that I've hired, and whether it's in marketing, whether it's operations, whether it's HR advising, women are incredible. And when I think about not just the what of what Culture Shift is, but when I think about the why of Culture Shift, I know there's a reason and a purpose for every single one of those women that I've hired. And I think understanding the power of that this is so much bigger than me. This is so much bigger than Alysha M. Campbell. It takes the what of what you do and amplifies it in such a beautiful and in such a humane way. And I think that's important because I think as business owners, we get caught up in the numbers and like, I have to make this much money or I have to see this much growth. And of course, like you want to be successful. There's nothing wrong with that. There's absolutely nothing wrong with wanting to be successful. But when you're able to get off of that roller coaster of numbers and cents and actually begin to look at the impact your work is making, the amazing lives that you are touching through your work, that is just on a whole different level. So I'm in a space now where through this journey, through the growth we've experienced, it's been a beautiful and scary ride. But I'm so grateful for how everything's come together and how things continue to expand and to grow and to continue to unfold as the next chapter unfolds. So, as we wrap up this episode, our inaugural episode of Confessions of a Founder, I wish everyone that listens, whether you listen to the whole season or listen to a snippet on our social media platforms, that you take away the fact that the work we do, whether you are still in a corporate job, whether you are day one of being a solopreneur, whether you have been in your business for 10 plus years, know that you are changing lives, that you are creating and manifesting beautiful impact every single day. And that's the biggest thing we could ever do. That's the biggest mark we could ever leave in the world, is how we make people feel. And as long as we are making people feel valued, beautiful, and connected, then we have done our job. And with that, we're going to sign off on our first episode of Confessions of a Founder. Thank you so much for listening in, tuning in. Stay safe and be well.